Shit. Hey! Episode 172, This Life in Tech. I'm Jason. And Dan's over there.
And I'm TK.
So what's going on?
A lot. I mean, where do you want to start? We want to talk about Web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And because I had raised the question actually last week, and we've been talking about it. We all had to. I think we're fortunate, at least I feel like I'm fortunate, that I got the experience to transition from a non-internet based existence and consuming information primarily through a traditional library. My mom was a librarian, as you guys know. And then having the internet and essentially having that library online now. That's kind of like my way that I view things. And so I started wondering, why didn't we just start with Web 2.0, which is user-generated dynamic content? We started with this very static, which when you look at it seems very primitive, right? I don't know if you've ever gone back to like a GeoCities or an Angel Fire page. Some of them still exist, but it's so archaic. It makes me wonder, I can't believe my generation is responsible for that, but we are. So I don't know. Or you want to talk about chickens?
I think Web 1.0 in particular was in large part driven by dial-up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you wanted to put any content of any decent size through dial-up, you had to sit there and basically pick up a book and read it while you got enough buffering, or it came to you, and then you could start to consume it. I think Web 2.0 and now certainly 3 and beyond, when we start talking about different things, it's all fueled by throughput. How fast can you get the content to your machine? And right or wrong, with the quickness that we can get stuff to the machines fuels the hamster-like attention nature of the world now, right? It's like, boom, it's instantaneous, right? Right. What other reason would you say that it was driven by static images largely, other than it just took a while to get to you in comparison to today?
Yeah. I think
through most of the forms of communication in this country, from the telegraph, smoke signal to dial-up. I mean, he's been there for all of it, even through the Pony Express. So he remembers all these things. I don't know about you, Jason. I don't know in terms of from where you're at, but I don't actually remember a time without some form of internet at the house because my dad was an early adopter. We had something. At one point, it was arrows, and it was. Because I remember it was of the house that we were living in. I'm like, oh, what's this? And it was just like bulletin boards. Things of that nature. Not a whole lot. To then, like the big thing was Prodigy, and then all of a sudden now we have some. But we had a separate phone line in the house just for the dial-up into Prodigy.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And then it was Netscape. Then it was AOL.
Yeah, and AOL. Yeah. And I remember because we were one of the first to have DSL line, and so we got more than 56K. And then of course, so I tend to agree with you. It's largely about the data speeds, and I still don't understand why today. Because if you want to make a huge protocol update to the internet, why the hell are these cable companies still have different upload and download speeds? All it is the protocol that they're using. Switch the protocol. I mean, coming in like Verizon. I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult. So if you want to make a huge impact, like they tried selling me the other day, hey, we can upgrade you to 300 megabits. And I'm like, does my upload speed change? No. Well, what do I care?
Right. See, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't get internet access until I bought it for myself when I was in undergrad. But I was aware of it. There was one friend amongst this group of friends that I had in high school that, have I ever told you? I don't know if I ever told this story. I got to think about if I can actually tell it. Anyway, I'll tell you a piece of it. We had one friend whose dad had, let's say, some off the book revenue streams. And because of that, had access to what were old bulletin boards, right? And so that was the person that had a modem. The only other exposure I had to it was, of course, to the public library where my mother worked. And so, like, all the way back to the Apple IIe with the phone receiver on the dial machine, I had an idea that this existed, but I didn't actually have access myself until that's probably like 95-ish, maybe. So really early internet, but anyway. I think that's a huge part of it. It's a good point. I think another part of it too is think about content creation. Like most of us didn't have access. Most of us. I don't know if the general public or a big enough amount of people to cross the threshold had access to a machine sufficiently powered to produce content. Whereas now that computational power is ubiquitous and it's cheap as fuck.
Yeah, that's probably largely due. I mean, and we think about today, I didn't have internet for a couple of days. Something, box got fried or whatever, and I was able to do all of my work, including all the live streaming with Blue Jeans and Zoom, tethered to my phone.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there that want to talk about how internet is, basically, biased, so to speak, that it brings up different inequalities in the classes of citizen. But I'm going, you all have a phone, and they forget that phone 4G speed still gets up to 50 meg. Depending on which how the quality is on it, but it's still a lot. Most bank branches are running still off of T1s. So. Yeah. You have something in your pocket, because in the United States, it's 95% coverage for 4G, and even 3G speeds. You're getting, I think the maximum for 3G is 5 meg,
something like that. I mean, which is still better than 56K dial-up. Yeah. I mean, it's still access to consume information. Maybe you're not uploading content that you've generated, but you're totally right. It wasn't too long ago. Well, when COVID hit and I started working from home exclusively again, I was like, well, shit, maybe it's time, because I don't know when this is going to change, to get a second line right to my office. And Marcia, Mrs. Pittman, was like, hey, wait a minute, dummy. Why don't you just tether? I'm like, oh, I forgot I could do that. And sure enough, man. And the reason it gets brought up too is because, of course, now we're, in fact, just this week, we had a tropical storm. It was near hurricane level, and we lose power here all the time when that happens. I'm just flip over to the tether. I'm fine.
Yeah. Do you have a generator there yet?
We do on the other part of the farm, the bigger property, not this one. So there's a place essentially where we'll change topics quickly since you brought it up. We essentially have a family-wide disaster plan, where when certain things happen, we all kind of converge on a certain spot, and that's where all the resources are.
Smart.
How do you get the chickens there?
They want to cross the road. Damn
it, you stole my joke. You stole my joke.
You keep these up for me like this. It's easy. It's too easy.
You grab as many as you can carry, because that's your food for the next few days. No, it's not.
Well, as long as they're doing egg production, it can be, right?
Well, yeah, sure. See, the nice thing is I sent Dan the photo. I'll try to show you guys. That mobile hen house coop can actually slot into that horse barn. So if there's hurricanes, which we won't get a hurricane, it's not going to knock buildings down, but the wind and the rain can be pretty severe here, and you can just slide it right in there. Let me see if I can show you guys a picture while we're talking about internet, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking of a horse farm, whenever I wind up having big enough land, I'm just you need to get this kind of horse, Jason, as well. This thing is called a Brabant.
How cool is that?
Yeah, that's nice. You got to get a Brabant horse, Jason.
I have to?
Well, you should. Better than a donkey.
You have to, because Dan just told you you have to.
It looks like something that it's like a medieval horse.
Yeah.
It's a Belgian horse, but it's called a
It's like a draft horse. It's big, right?
Draft horse, yeah. I'm like, holy! There's like muscles on its like teeth. This thing looks like it's on steroids.
Yeah, for people that haven't been around horses, I mean, like Appaloosa regular horses that you see like in Western movies, they're not small. When you get into draft horses, they're big. Yeah. They're really, really, really big.
Yeah, this thing is huge. Then
they're not small.
You could just put the chicken house on it, and it'll pull it up to the next house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, where I live, it's not uncommon to have horses. Well, I mean, the field that the chicken coop is going to be in is a horse pasture. They just got rid of all the horses.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the beauty of the internet, I'll tie this back in, which is we've kind of also discovered, because I mean, the nice thing about having like this little setup is you can call it a hobby farm. It's not like a full scale production farm, even though there's enough land to do it if you wanted to scale it up. Is you can have lots of small little income streams, right? And so like the garden can be one, especially with the strawberries now. The peppers are another story, man. I have to reseed them for a third time this season. The rain got them now. Whatever. They're fragile fuckers. Anyway.
Did the Farmer's Almanac not predict how much rain you were going to have at this particular time?
Not exactly. It's eerily accurate sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But there's also conditions that the almanac can't account for, like us not knowing what we're doing and putting things in the wrong part of the field. That's on me, not the Farmer's Almanac. And so you can experiment with all these little small income streams. And so like one thing is, well, I mean, we're going to be breeding chickens, and then you got chicks, and then you can sell the chicks and the roosters and all that jazz, right? And at least for us being new to this and new to the area, I mean, we know like our family, and I know the people from the university, but I really don't know anybody. You know what I mean? I'm not part of like a farming community. Yet, right? But yeah, I told you guys, I think 2 weeks ago, we didn't get the one breed of chicks that we want, which are like the true midwife hens, where they'll sit on any egg, right? Found somebody on Craigslist. Beauty of the internet.
Were you looking on the back page?
I was not responsible for this.
It was on eggsquatters.com.
Yeah.
Speaking of content delivery.
Eggsquatters.com. Dude, I'm going to have to go buy that real quick. I'm glad nobody watches this show. That's clever.
We get like 18 people watch it.
Not live. I mean, there's a nice delay in the consumption of the show.
I don't know if anyone watches it live, but
there's two people, right? I mean, there's usually some people. There's two people right now. Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the beauty of the internet. And so like Marsha's been able to connect with people to talk about, hey, I want this breed. Do you have it available and stuff? You wouldn't have been able to do that in 1.0. Impossible.
Wow. You would just all had to been on like AOL or something along those lines.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, like in a chat room, you mean?
Yeah.
The internet was very proprietary back then.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is so funny about with that. So, AOL used to send out all those CDs and give you like 500 hours. So I just would collect them. So I didn't pay for I don't know how long. You just had to keep changing your screen name, so to speak. So I would let people know that was telling, hey, by the way, tomorrow my screen name is going to be blah, blah, blah. So
right.
They're like, I don't need this thing. Like, I'll take it. So, I mean, I had AOL for years for free.
Well, think about a company like MapQuest. Like in dial-up internet, you'd go here, I'm here, I want to go there. You'd have to type it out. There was no location services or anything. You just type it out, and then you'd sit there and wait, go about your business for 5 or 10 minutes, and then it would offer to print it. And then you'd print it out, and then you'd get in your car and you'd drive there with these paper directions still.
Yeah.
Right? And that was orders of magnitude better than having like one of those ABC map books.
Or going to AAA and getting the triptychs. Yeah.
Right. And it was such a quantum leap, and everybody's like, man, this MapQuest thing is awesome. Where is MapQuest these days? Right? It's totally, and even you look at what Google's going now, like if I plug in your address, in rural North Carolina, and it's like, I don't know how to get there, just because it's not quantified right? Now you can send me they have the little tag you can send me with effectively based on the lat and long, and then I can navigate there based on that. I mean, that's, when you start talking about content exchange, even at what we now consider to be a basic function of your phone is being able to navigate somewhere. Right. And if you think about it, I think across the globe, you're really down in the US to one option, something from Google, right? Because Apple Maps, they've never figured it out, right? And they've never figured out the last 500 yards, right?
And
I'll give you an example. When I used to work up in Herndon, our building was on the side of Route 28. Route 28 is a north-south road that kind of divides going to DC, and then on the other side of Route 1 on 28 is Dulles. Right, so you've got this big corridor of defense contractors on one side and the airport on the other. And I'm trying out Apple Maps when it first came out against Google Maps, largely because I knew I'm going to go into a classroom where the customer is going to ask me what's what. Apple Maps got me to the Route 28 side of the road, the one with the big fence that's unusable land and undrivable land between me and the road, rather than saying, hey, go up to the next exit and get off and drive to the front of the building. And I don't think they've ever really cracked the code on that. And then Waze came out, right? And then, we did experiments with that. And then Google bought Waze. And so now, which is better, Google Maps or Waze? I personally have gone to liking Google Maps because I like the interface better, and they still have all the feature set now. Yeah. And it's all about being able to, in semi-real time, help me navigate a quicker and more expeditious path to where I'm going.
Yeah.
To me, it depends on which one I use. Like if I'm going somewhat long distance, I'll use Waze because I want to know where the cops are.
True. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's,
that's basically the updated user content of, hey, there's a car on the side of the road. There's a pothole.
Right.
Maps has not. I don't know. I mean, I hear rumors all the time that they're planning on eventually incorporating all of that stuff directly into Google Maps, but that's pretty much the only thing that I say that Waze really has over it.
Yeah, I use,
when you guys want to go find, like if you want to go, and I'm not talking about navigating to someplace. When somebody says, hey, is this restaurant open? What's the menu like? Do you try to go to the restaurant, or do you go on to Google Maps and type in the name of the restaurant?
I go through Google Maps.
Yeah, so do I. And that's and statistically, so do an ever-growing majority of Americans do that. They don't navigate. It's not a traditional path to find that type of information. Is now Google Maps, not Google itself, because of the search results. Right, I can get very accurate. Type in Joe's Restaurant, Virginia Beach. If they're, or a chain restaurant, the thing, or because it knows my location. So it's sensitive. It's highly sensitive to where I'm at.
Yeah. I mean, it'll even tell you, hey, by the time you arrive, it's not going to be opened yet.
Yep.
When you get there, it's going to be a mob scene when you get there.
Yeah.
Statistically.
Exactly.
Right.
Well,
you guys,
and what I like is
big crowds.
Well, right. And what I like, and the reason I do it that way for myself is because I want to make a quick decision and I don't want to have to flip between a bunch of different apps.
Right. It's a one-stop solution.
Yeah. Well, this largely came about, because Google wants to have all information. They want to be the sole source of information. Everything they do is about that. That's not Apple's state of mind. It's not Microsoft. That's why I believe until eventually Google will take over being the better overall platform for companies and people. And it won't be Microsoft. It won't be Amazon. They have a different mindset.
I'll give an example of how the mindset manifests itself. So the company I'm at right now, we went to G Suite, right? As our company spun out of the parent company, we didn't have those type of office systems in place and everything like that. And so the chairman, who's a legacy Microsoft user, that's the company's 25 years old. What was his option 25 years ago, right? And they've kind of moved into having the E3, all that cloud-based enterprise style Microsoft that you would expect a company to have, right? And I said, well, we're going to go with Google. And it was like, ooh, we fear change. I've never done that before. And I said, look, here's just, if we assume they're both the same security level, good or bad, right? They're both roughly the same security level. Then here's the cost, right? Here's what I get. I don't need to buy Zoom licenses. I don't need to buy this. I don't need to buy that. It's all inclusive in there. And it's got the same measure of security as Microsoft. In some cases, some people would say better. Well, he was so used to, and everybody that we think they were so used to that. Tell me which drive it's on. What's the file? Give me a path name, right? I want the file architecture. And finally I go, what's the one thing that Google's really good at? And he's like, search. I go, so go up in that search box. And I'm going to tell you what the name of the file is and just type it in. And then look, now go to your drive. There's a priority section. It's what you've looked at recently. Like if you want to do that format, but as long as you know the name of the option, and that became a training piece that when you say, hey, we're going to, in a meeting, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z, and here's the name of the document to reference it. Now everybody's kind of got that Pavlovian response that they go to the search box on Google Drive, and it doesn't matter where the content lives in the drive anymore. As long as I know as long as I know what the name of the document is, the ubiquitous nature of Google and the defining moment of their about search. Once you get that done, the rest of Google's G Suite is easy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we also see hints of, at least for me, what Web 3.0 really ought to be, which is the context surrounding the Web 1.0 static content and the Web 2.0 dynamic content. Because if you scale that up a little more to be a little more advanced, right now, at least with file objects, let's say, you can search based on attributes or metadata, which is context or semantic. Right. And so it's not just file name, which works really well, but it's also even down to one of the things I personally love with my research teams is just using like the free Google Docs version. You have built-in version control. And so don't show me what is, show me what was. And because I have like a built-in ability to see a difference. You know what I mean?
Right.
Man, is that powerful.
Does Google have something like Dell yet?
Not that I know of, but I don't use all the products. So there's the basic, there's like what I call the small business version, which is thing, and then there's the enterprise version. In the enterprise version, there's a much greater capability to do that. I don't think that it's as intrusive as Dell can be, which Dell is down to the very granular level about what people are doing, but it's funny watching a longtime Microsoft user kind of find out, you get every now and then you get, wow, that's really cool, right? Because in large measure, when you start talking about, an online experience with Microsoft, they're trying to catch up to Google. Yeah, and Google has basically seeded the downloaded app thing. But what's Google doing now? Their big thing is, hey, all these documents can be used offline, right? In creating, so if that's what you need to do, right? And even when you travel, right? It used to be, I got to make sure I got all this stuff. So while I'm sitting at the airport, whatever, I can work. No, I got two choices. I either glom on to airport Wi-Fi, or I do what? I tether.
Yeah.
Right. And look at it's the new Microsoft Surface. It's basically ARM processor and it's got a modem in it.
Yeah,
it's one of the new Surface books. It's geared towards what I believe, the 5G experience, like where, hey, everything's going to have a modem in it now because it can, and that's not what I would call generically Web 3.0, but what it is a fundamental change in how we think about enabled objects to connect up to the internet.
Right. The biggest thing that Google's missing today, which won't be very long for them, is to be able to integrate in directly with Active Directory for that hierarchical. So this way you can. So to me, that Dell aspect that really helps me is knowing what my peers are also, because I get those basically machine learning like suggestions of, hey, your boss is looking at this document and you also have access to this document. You may want to know what's in this document.
Right.
So this way, because you never know which those things are going to happen. And that's really, I think, what Google, there's no reason to recreate Active Directory. I think, why compete? There's no money in it. It's like going to the restaurant because of the silverware.
Right.
So Microsoft maintaining that Active Directory schema, so to speak, and whether or not it's Active Directory, in the cloud or on-prem or whatever, it should be in the cloud. So once they have that, I think then it'll be so much even easier for companies to make that switch. To just, that's pretty much the only thing that, because I love Google everything. I'm a Google whore for sure. I'm all, it's easy to use. And when we talk about the security aspect, still today, there's really only, two ways that people get popped for the most part. It either they came in through email and then goes out to the internet, or they clicked on a link somewhere else through some, whether, some other website that took them there, blah, blah, blah. But who gets more spam and sees more spam than Google? I can't, because of all the personal accounts. Almost everyone has a Gmail account.
Right.
I can't think of anyone today that has like a Hotmail account or even a Yahoo account. Pretty much everyone, if it's a personal email, it's Gmail. So
I got an email from an older gentleman that sent me something at AOL recently. My natural instinct is to respond and ask them to come on in for the big win and join the 21st century. But you try not to be an a-hole to people most of your life, and it's under that heading of, all right, man, that's how you want to communicate with the world. But I even now with G Suite, there's a lot of, I think the alert in the enterprise versions, the small business and certainly the big, the anti-phishing notifications on that I think they're great.
Yeah. And you can still put in a proof point or something along those lines to more of the content aspect for a corporation. So if you're wanting to make sure certain documents with PII blah 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 doesn't go out, you can still throw a proof point in collaboration with G Suite. You can do it with Microsoft 365 as well. But it's there. It's just a matter of time. I imagine Google will very quickly be doing something with an integration into Active Directory to get you that hierarchy. It's just a matter of time.
I think it's inevitable. Unless they have a completely different plan, but I don't know how they're going to ignore that if they actually want to grow more than they already are.
Yeah.
I didn't read, because I was just inundated with stuff. I got an article or a kind of a, hey, here's something cool you can do from the Google folks as an administrator the other day. And it was a lot about Microsoft integration. Mm-hmm. Right? If I want to do G Suite, but I want to keep my E3 and do my email via Microsoft, right? Mm-hmm. And Outlook and have that Active Directory component, I can still use Google Docs and do everything else. And basically now there's a way to bridge that. I'll look that up. But I think, Dan, that leads naturally towards that step you were saying. That's the natural first step is, hey, I don't have to, natively at this point build or have an appliance to link, be able to make me, or allow me, I should say, to use Active Directory. All I got to do is give you access to all the Google stuff. Yeah. And it's easier for me to link that together than it is to go F with AD or such.
Yeah, so, that's it. Just doesn't make any, because it can do LDAP. It's all that stuff. It just doesn't make. It's like I said. I feel like for Google or anyone to try to recreate Active Directory, it's like going to the restaurant because of the silverware.
Right. Well, and think about. Look at the Beltway. Like how quickly can you find somebody that will build you an API kit to dovetail Active Directory into whatever you're building? Right? It's insane how quickly you can do that. We back in the day I put in an APB for somebody to build an API kit, and we had 5 people within 2 hours.
Yeah.
offering 5 companies coming in saying, hey, give us a proposal and we'll tell you what we can do.
Yeah.
Right? And so it is ubiquitous. And I think that, just remembering what I got this way, like I said, I haven't really gone through it, but the net of it was, hey, if you want to keep your Microsoft experience with email, and I would assume the only reason to do that, if you're, because email's email, the only reason to do that is if you value your AD LDAP experience, but you want to go the Google Docs. I mean, the inline collaboration with Google Docs now of all forms is badass. And like you said, I can always go back and look at that historical record of who changed what when. And you can turning it on and dialing up kind of the granularity of whether it stays with that document until you say it's finished, as far as being visible to you as you're doing it, I think is very, very advanced.
Mm-hmm. It's only a matter of time. I mean, they're going to make Google Sheets better. I mean, if they're looking to go after the enterprise as well, they'll make that better in order to be able to the accountant folks and the finance people that we can actually run, other calculations outside of basic things, because there's no plugins really for Google Sheets, at least that I'm aware of at this moment, where I can utilize and do machine learning type plugins, or like the most powerful thing that I've seen that a company can do is buy a program called Solver, which will add into Microsoft Excel, which gets into a lot of not just the machine learning, but also coming up with the different scenarios.
Yeah,
I mean, it's expensive. I mean, it's like $10,000 a license.
So here's a question for you guys. It's particularly around this idea of Active Directory and using that as a core, but then having like third party, relative to Microsoft, third party being Google in this case, these applications, right? Do you think this is kind of the same conversation at some point somebody at Microsoft was having about Novell? Oh,
well, Active Directory looks an awful lot like Novell directory structure.
Well, of course it does. I mean, that's not. But at the point of LDAP becoming Active Directory, right? And that's synonymous. I mean, people forget that LDAP is an open protocol.
Yeah.
It's its own application protocol. Active Directory is an incarnation of that. That was when Microsoft was into, hey, look, that looks good. Let's, At that point, what else did Novell have? They had directory services, and that was my limited memory.
Server operating system. That was it. And
right.
They were like, oh yeah, no one's ever going to want this other stuff.
Right.
I was like,
right.
Because I had my CNE in 4.1, so it was an MCSE for 4.0 and a CNE in 4.1.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I remember dealing with some Novell legacy stuff at a company we bought. And this was like you were going from NT4 to 2000 server in Microsoft. And we're like, hey, wait a minute. Why would we keep that when we got this? Like,
But what you're talking about is imagination, right? Yeah. Most of the time, most failures in life, and I've said it on this show before, most failures in life don't happen because people intend to fail. They happen because they don't have the imagination to go, hey, I could change the world doing this. And you get from companies, whether they look at, hey, that's, because did Novell really know what they had, right? Who knows, right? They had a cool tool. They were making money. They were doing all this other stuff. But at the time, somebody at Microsoft or some other company looked at it and said, hey, this is the future, right? And they imagined what exploitation of that tool could offer to the world, in this case, for enterprise.
And Novell also allowed Microsoft to steal their dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they got their lunch eaten, didn't they?
They did. They bought some Linux variant. I don't know if it was Mandrake they bought or something like that. And
no, that was SUSE, wasn't it? The German distribution.
Yeah, SUSE. They bought SUSE. That's when it was, and now no one uses that either. So I mean, it's like everything they decided to do. Because then Ubuntu ate their lunch, Microsoft ate their lunch. I mean, they should just stop existing. Get into another line of work. They should go become greeters at Walmart.
So
I don't.
I just where I was going right now. I just on that one.
Very rare I can make both of you speechless at the same time.
So think about this. When we talk about you talk about where we came from a static environment, effectively, to what we believe to be a highly didactic, move from didactic phase into a highly active phase, but we're still driven by the written word as an archive.
Yeah.
That's what all these Office products are. We're still driven as humans by the written word as an archive. As you say, we're moving to Web 3.0, 5.0, the whatever the next generation is. That's fueled by two things. One, an unbelievable growth rate in throughput, in bandwidth, and two, storage being cheap, right, or near free, right? You have a Google Enterprise account, you get unlimited storage, right? So why do I have to have everything in the written word and then have you sign it? Right? Why don't we just store like what we're doing now? But now you're talking through a problem, and it can be the group discussion. And here's what we decide at the end. And there's a format that evolves. Whether a format evolved to where we use PowerPoint all the time, right? What does PowerPoint lack? It lacks context.
That's right.
Right? And it's the one reason why we would in the military we would always say it's PowerPoint's bulletized content. And it's got to be, right? And you try to jam it, people try to jam as many bullets into each slide as you can because you got to talk to the leader every 12 hours, right? Well, in the case of the war on terror, the Afghans, they still blame Genghis Khan for their problems, right? That's the world, that's the time horizon that they're in, right? He's been dead for more than an hour, right? And yet they still blame him for destroying the aquifers and turning that country largely into the surface of the moon, right? How do you fight that with PowerPoints and bulletized content, right? You're looking at a different time horizon, and in general, how things get lost in translation, whether it's in the written word or both in the case of PowerPoints or documents, is it lacks context. The reader, the acceptor of that data, can't discern what the context was. Now, if we have records of conversations, right? And then there becomes a format of signature, ITK at the end of it, right? That kind of thing. Or, hey, guess what? It came out of your pie hole while we're talking, and here's the video of it. You own it. Right. What's that look like? And why, how do we quantify that? What's the next? How do we box that up for content that you can send it to another human? Do I have to send it, or do I just have to alert you that it's there somewhere?
Right.
And does email collapse into more of a text, that multimedia stream where, hey, it's here, go find it. And now I'm just sending you where it lives.
Well, I don't think it's hard to imagine, based on what you're saying, one of the beauties of what makes us so different than all other life is we develop this ability through spoken word and particularly written word to offload memory. Because that's the one thing we all suck at. No matter what you want to tell yourself, memory is fallible in a lot of ways. And so we develop the ability to tell each other stories.
And it can be manipulated.
Oh, easily. I mean, you do it. Your own mind does it.
Yeah,
Forget about somebody else doing it, right? You do it to yourself constantly. We all do. And so we develop the ability to sit around fires and tell stories. And then we develop the ability to do that and then write it down and pass it through generations.
Right.
And so part of what is limiting, as you pointed out, is I can read what you had to say, but I can never discover unless I talk to you what you were thinking when you were thinking that, right? And so I don't think it's hard to imagine in the very near future being able to, on a Kindle, right? I love reading in the Kindle app, or particularly on a paperwhite Kindle, of having some type of video or maybe even audio, if I want a compressed format, ability to pop up context of, okay, you wrote this, but now I can, let's say, do a certain gesture and you tell me what you were thinking when you wrote that.
Well, but
that's tremendous.
To a certain extent, you do, like when especially if you're listening to Audible and the author is reading the book.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because their passion, their emotion is going to get translated. And you put that in, you associate video with that, because whether we believe it or whether you consciously accept it, when we're listening to somebody, we're looking at their micro expressions on their face. Are they leaning in? What's the passion? Are they, in violent disagreement with you internally, but outwardly they're trying to get along with the group? And can they control that emotion set?
Yeah.
If you look at, before we used to sit around the campfire, and then we started writing stuff down. Why? Because there was never a large enough group sitting around the campfire to make that information go global, right? So we started writing things down. We invented the printing press. And then you look at media, right? It used to be the town crier. He would walk out and he would talk to the thing, and then you'd go away and you'd have to translate it, right? That one individual would talk to 10, 20, 100, and then how slow is that growth?
Right.
Then we'd post things in the town square, and the people that could read would largely be the subcontracted town crier to the people that couldn't read. And it became a one-way conversation. Same with the newspapers, right? All the news that's fit to print. And then you had the media barons, right? And then the first great theft of the government happened. Everybody had radio. Radios became ubiquitous throughout things, and the radio waves weren't regulated. Right. And so it became a two-way conversation, right? With media, with the news and everything, it became a two-way conversation. Then we created the FCC and we absconded with the airways, and we sold it back to whom? Big media companies. So as my grandparents used to say, let's go sit around the radio and listen and watch the radio, right? They used to say, watch the radio. And then by virtue of expense, television was always a one-way medium. Right. And I'm old enough to remember Walter Cronkite would tell you 3 stories. This is what's important. He would tell you 3 stories, and they would do a little blurb on the stock market at the end of the thing. And if you wanted to get in-depth news, you went back and read a newspaper that were controlled by newspaper barons that were putting out their opinion. Like that they were, it's still, now we could argue whether it's more fact-based than the internet or not. Right. But that's more of a function of that time, not whether it is or not. And then all of a sudden the internet comes out, the single greatest tool to share information and communicate we've ever devised. And what are we trying to do to it now? We're trying to basically regulate who can say what, right? That and the cancel culture of, hey, if I get triggered, I'm gonna block you from being my Twitter friend because I don't want to hear your opinion anymore. I don't care to know why. I don't care anything. That's the arc we've been on, right? And we still pass the written word around as that thing. Well, now, when you want to go get somebody on a political scale, you don't go look. Even now, we still look at what sitting jurists have done if we're going to promote them to a higher level of the court, right? Because we have a really well-documented system of opinion and dissent. But if I want to go politically to get somebody now, I want to go get a video. Why? Because people don't want to read crap anymore. They want to watch other humans because they can get the emotion, they can get the sense of anger, happiness, and all of those things that go along with having a conversation, right? And right now, we're in this, how many people are writing articles? What's the booming consulting business? How to be more human and how to have a more human-like, a more personal, interactive, conversation on a Zoom meeting. Right. Well, hey, pay attention. Look at the people when they're talking. Right. And I would tell people, if we were all still working at the last place together, I would say, look, I want the standard Zoom view to be when the person who's speaking, it comes up and it's full screen. So I'm not distracted to go look at somebody else picking their nose or whatever. I'm looking at that person that's engaged like you would do in a normal conversation. You're sitting around a conference table. So one person starts talking, everybody moves and they look. Why? Because you want to get a feel emotionally for what that person is. Do they really believe it? Are they saying it because the boss said it? Are they a sycophant of the boss, right? Or are they really staking a claim that we need to pay attention to because it's an innovative new way to think, right? That's why I think we're going to go back to this personal experience. And the personal experience today isn't the sitting around the campfire. We're sitting around the campfire right now.
Exactly. Yes. I agree 100%. Yeah, that's effectively what this is. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, we're spinning a narrative of some kind, and we're sharing that time and space.
and it also gets back to I didn't say it that way. I meant it like this when I had written it, right? Well, okay, when you've written something, I can say, okay, I absorbed that content with my own biases, and I thought you meant this. But what I'm really saying is, I meant this, and you said something that I felt I could agree with, and more importantly, put your stamp of approval on my mindset.
Right.
By doing it this way, where people are talking to each other and you're getting it out, now the context is much clearer.
Yeah.
I think that's why it will drag this way.
And you have an opportunity to work through disagreement.
Correct.
Yeah. Like I was reading a book this morning before we started, and I'm like, and it's an old book. It was written in the 13th century. So it's not like I can disagree with this dude. You know what I mean? But at least if there was some contextual archive around what was written, at least I wasn't disagreeing. I could disagree with more than just a word or a sentence. You know what I mean? Because I could get a feel for the actual viewpoint that went into the generation of that word or sentence.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, I think that's the near future, the very near future for the internet. Well, I'll give you a perfect example to kind of wrap this up with. It was really important for me to watch the launch yesterday with my daughter because I want her to get a sense of, again, having a bigger world view, right? Plus, it's pretty fucking cool. And I remember watching like the Challenger and all that stuff launch when I was a kid. And so we don't have TV, but I went to turn on a feed through YouTube, and it was like CBS or something. And they had all these talking heads that have no idea what they're talking about talking.
Right.
Al Roker and shit, right? Dude, I don't care what Al Roker thinks about SpaceX. I don't. And so what did I do? I flipped over to Twitch.tv, which is a video game streaming service.
Right.
And NASA and SpaceX were streaming through Twitch. Shit, I'll watch that all day. Now I can listen.
I watched it through the Discovery Channel, and it was incredibly interesting to watch it through the Discovery Channel because, as you would imagine, they had a little bit of the talking head piece on there, but it wasn't geared around opinion or anything like that. And they had former astronauts.
Yes.
Right? And they were, and the great thing about having a former astronaut, when, I think when you look at what Elon Musk did, I'm not talking about the vision. I'm not talking about just, hey, I'm not taking no for an answer. I will put a man in space, right? Yeah. When everybody said that was the unbridled domain of the government, right? Yeah, you can go launch equipment and resupply and do all that stuff, but the domain is that. Talking to the astronauts that I know, every one of them has basically quietly cheered for SpaceX to be successful. But look at everything surrounding it. That is an elegant solution. Mm-hmm. Right? It almost looks like a fashion designer did the spacesuits. When you look at the dashboard, so to speak, right? When they come out, they don't hop in some old van that used to be a bread delivery truck. They hop in a Tesla, right? Yeah. It's very 21st century.
Where was the launch done at?
Kennedy, Florida. Yeah,
I was in Florida.
Yeah,
yeah. Interesting because I would have been, if I don't follow it a whole lot in terms of the laws, in terms of whether or not to put people in space. But I'm like, why not just go out to the international waters and do whatever the hell you want? Yeah.
Well, I think there's still a certain amount of national pride involved in this. Oh, and SpaceX, their behind got saved by NASA to win the contract to start shooting cargo into space, right? Yeah. To me, getting the thing out there and getting it in an optimal orbit and getting that's the easy part. Like, we have a big book of business from 1960 whatever to today on how to do that. I thought the amazing piece was, while we're just talking and they're showing things, all of a sudden, boom, the booster rocket's back down on thing. And the best analogy I heard was one of the former astronauts said, look, what he's doing is effectively throwing a pencil off the Empire State Building and landing it on its eraser on a playing card on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And yet they were like, oh yeah, we're here. It's done. That is what's going to be, that's a game changer in so much as it now allows us with a much more cost-effective base. And why is that important? Because a business developed that, right? They have to be price sensitive, right? Because there's SpaceX is a public corporation, and they have to be sensitive to their shareholders. But more importantly, now we can launch one of the astronauts said yesterday, this is going to give us the ability to launch stuff into space weekly, not monthly or quarterly.
That's right. And
right?
Dude, I 100% agree with you. And that's why I made sure we watched also the 2 boosters coming down. And I don't know if you guys haven't seen, and anybody watching hasn't seen it, watch the video. It's one of the most glorious yet creepiest things I've ever seen in my life. These 2 boosters just go, it's like somebody has reverse footage, right? That's how unreal it seems.
But it's the idea of like, okay, how are we going to deal with something coming back through the Earth's atmosphere and not getting burned up? Well, guess what? We're going to fight gravity with booster rockets. We're going to slow it down so it goes gently through the storm. It doesn't go, wheels, like we've normally done. Right.
Well, and I think it really speaks. Yeah. And I think it really speaks to the message I think all of us share and try to promote is that's what happens when you say, look, this is what I'm going to do. I mean, yeah, you're going to have this company. You have to cut costs somehow. And imagine coming up with the idea, well, shit, I'll just make the boosters autonomous and have them land themselves. How about that?
Did you hear what Elon Musk said about getting to Mars? Like how to incentivize the human race to get to Mars most quickly? What he wants to do is he wants to shoot a rocket to Mars, a cargo rocket, and he wants to offload a greenhouse onto Mars. He's like, once there's something living on Mars, then we're going to be more incentivized to go there.
I agree with him.
And what a great statement.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the power of you're not going to tell me no.
Exactly. Well, and I think you guys have heard me say that about like Disney, right? Imagine the sheer will to say, I'm not even going to build the biggest theme park ever. I'm going to do it in a swamp.
Yeah. Yeah. They gave me the land for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And again, that was a businessman, right? I could have picked other places that would have been great tourist destinations, but you know what? For the money I have to get the most bang out of the buck, what's my biggest expense right away is land. If I can get the state to give me that land, I'm off to the races. Right now, I can properly build the park to have the highest standard. And if you think about the ingeniousness, it's not the park, it's not the vision, it's not all that. It's the back end stuff that you don't see the players walking around, that subterranean system of that Mickey pops out somewhere where they're supposed to be. Right. It goes back to that childlike sense of shit just shows up. Like when you're a child, like groceries just show up, clothes just show up. Right. So if you basically suspend disbelief by having people show up where it's kind of the lever pulls in the background. One of my favorite pictures is the cafeteria at Disney from the 60s, because all the characters are all dressed up without their heads on, and they're just going through the cafe line to get something to eat. I thought, it's like, what a great statement.
Yeah.
When you get to those boosters coming back down, this just kind of gets back to the point of what Elon has done with everything in SpaceX is first principles design thinking. He didn't have to bring all this legacy stuff. He was able to take all the knowledge we already have about technology and space in general and said, all right, now how do I build it knowing all of these things today?
Exactly.
By doing that, he's able to do these things. A lot of times in everything that we do, that iterative thinking costs so much more than going, okay, now that we know all of these things, how do we do it? Which is, we could see this even in what we would consider, developing countries, or third world countries, whatever you want to call them, when it comes to communication. They don't have to put all these lines all over the place and start running, cable. We can do it now with cellular. So they don't have all of these types of infrastructure problems that we have. Why is it that a country like the United States still has power outages? Well, because it's old technology.
Yeah, right.
And it's costing too much to redo it.
Eastern Europe now is starting to get into a technology deficit because we're 20 plus years away, from the wall falling down. Right. I was used to joke around that, from 1947 to, when the wall came down, and then moving on after that, the whole of the Eastern European section of the intelligence community was like, man, we didn't know it was that bad. I'm like, well, then what were you doing for the past 50 years?
Yeah,
I'm like, what were we paying you to do? Like, they're like, wow, that's really bad. Like, you only had one job. Like, that's what we were paying you to do.
Yeah.
And when I first went to Eastern Europe, everybody had a cell phone. I didn't own a cell phone in the US, right? Because so you get in there and they've got 1940s, 50s technologies for land-based phones. I got two choices. You have some of the most foreboding territory on earth with, these mountains and those mountains. Do I blast rock, put down lines, or to say, hey, we can have a helicopter dump a cell tower over there?
Yeah, right.
Well, now they're in that 25-year thing where those things, and how do I reform those towers? And when you got to consider, certainly in some of the Eastern Europe with the graft, right? The politicians, and I'm not going to say the country, but they basically stuff their cousins, relatives, and everything, and they keep their welfare system low by overloading businesses. And the phone company has probably a 60%, 70% overage of people just because they got people on the payroll so that they're not having to take care of them on subsistence. Mm-hmm. Right. But they're facing that same crisis. They're facing a crisis of anachronistic technology compared to what it is today. I think you look at the steel industry. The steel industry is the biggest. You watch how it's moved around the planet. Why? Because it's a once in a lifetime build, right? You build a steel mill, a la the U.S., and you build it until the technology can no longer make delivery of that good or service price competitive. Right. So then, what happened in the 70s and 80s? All this major steel production moved to Japan. Then it moved to Korea, and where is it now? It's headed to India, mm-hmm. Right? Where's it going next? I don't know, but it's got to go somewhere because it's the arc of history that it's on. And I think when you look at, with technology in particular, because it's not a capital system, right? That you've got to put factories in the typical like 50s economic model when you go to MBA school is, remember that movie Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, The Economist? We're going to be building this, that style of, hey, we're going to do this. Business can be anywhere now. And if mm-hmm. you look at what Elon Musk is doing on the energy side, on the thing, everybody's out there with collection, whether it's wind, solar, whatever. He's concentrating on the big problem, storage.
Yep.
Right. And crack the storage piece, then you can make efficiencies in the collection piece, right? And then you can talk about different ways of collection that we haven't really thought of, because now we have a plausible way to store the energy longer than a few cycles of darkness. Right. And that's really, what we were talking about before. And look, I'd be interested to see from Toyota in particular, the long-term statistics on the first Prius to the hybrid cars they're putting out today.
Yeah.
I think that's to me that's a fascinating data set.
Well then, hey, we actually talked about what we wanted to talk about today, and a little more that's exciting. I like that.
But I think it was all tied in today, as opposed to the squirrel-like nature that we somewhat. Oh, look, there's something shiny over there. Let's go.
Well, sometimes you got to chase the leaf blowing in the wind, as it were.
Hey Dan, I subscribed to your other podcast. I followed simple instruction when you told me to do that yesterday.
Thank you. Got to get the custom link so I can keep up with my social capital.
Oh yeah, that makes it way easier.
Yeah, because right now it certainly makes it challenging, and I just keep having fun. Like I get to, the great part in doing it, just kind of like what we do every week, is we catch up, before we even come on the show, and I get to do that with people that I've lost contact with or ones that I want to maintain contact. It's fun.
Well, I think that's the important part. I mean, it's a lot of what we talked about today. You're giving context to thoughts, but it's also fun because you can actually have enjoyable conversations with people.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, and it just helps.
Has Ian finally moved into his new house so we can get him back on to bitch about getting up early again?
I have it on my calendar to ask him next week.
Next week.
Okay.
Because that was about the time I think he was telling me. Yeah, somewhere around there. It's coming up soon that I have it on my calendar to hit him up.
Last time he was on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember. Anyway.
Hey, Dan, on your show, you should have grammar time and then get him on and make him a weekly
That would be kind of funny.
Like they say, give a Marine a box of crayons, feed him for a day, teach him how to make crayons, feed him for the rest of his life.
I mean, one of the things, just like even doing this, as I'm trying that journey to CEO, when I've looked at other CEOs when they have town halls, anything along those lines, they are able to maintain that same professional speaking, regardless if it was pre-canned or not. And
right.
So doing this, doing my layer, is to practice and continue trying to get better and better at that over time. And so the way to do it is to do it often, to practice. So for a week, I'm doing something now with that thought in mind.
Cool.
And have that conversation.
It comes back to this. When people gravitate towards other people, whether it's socially, romantically, or professionally, they gravitate towards consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that consistency is something that people want to walk to, because you remove chaos in some piece of someone's life, that it becomes likable, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I said to either one of you, do you love your wife? And you say yes, I'm going to ask you to prove it. Like, how are you prove it? What is it? Well, what you most probably enjoy about them is their consistent behavior, right? Whether it's good or bad. But it's the old thing. It's like, hey, if you're an a-hole every day of the week, I can work with you because I know what I'm getting, right?
Right.
If you're a really cool person every day of the week, I can work with that because I know what I'm getting. When I walk into the room, if I don't know what I'm going to get, that becomes problematic. That's when people don't tell you the truth. That's when people that are in dissent or people that don't play along, that's when they get fired, right? And it creates a long-term bad strategy. But if you're consistent in your behavior, then you become a more attractive person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The problem is, and I was reading an article earlier this week about this very thing. The problem is that boards are usually attracted to people that at some level are malignant narcissists, because they come in, they're very verbose, I've got a plan, I'm a leader. And what it does is they make their personal intellectual property how they run, how they're out there, and all the wins are about them, right? It's not about the company, right? And get that sense of, hey, I'm a leader. I get all the praise because I have to accept some of the detraction. Well, the problem is most of those types of leaders, they shoulder slide the bad stuff onto the subordinates, right? And that becomes the problem. And so when, Dan, you say you want to build a consistent brand, you already have one, right? Because I've worked with you. I've seen how you deal at multiple companies with your people, right? Your way of growing somebody or grooming them is to be sarcastic with them, right? And I would tell, if I would have gotten in front of a room of people and they're saying, how do we get along with Dan? I'm like, look, as long as he's being sarcastic with you, you may not like it in the moment, but that means he's expending, and he's going to continue to expend his intellectual and his business knowledge on you because he believes in you. When he stops doing that is when you have to worry, right? And that's the consistency of anybody. Like, how are you consistent, right? That's your consistency. And that's why, in my opinion, you don't have a following of sycophants. You have people that want to follow you because they know that you're going to try to make them better, and they don't mind being intellectually challenged.
Right.
That's probably true. And I'm always trying to better. I'm not just trying to better them, but each time when I'm talking with them, I'm also, I've learned that being and having a goal of being a lifelong teacher means you have to constantly be educating yourself.
Right.
Otherwise,
all three of us are that way, right? Every week we want to find something. I want to wake up every day and learn something new.
yeah, and I want to keep having those. This is why I love having interns, and I will always have an intern working for me in some capacity. Directly for me, because that has to keep reminding me also of my humility. This is where I came from. This.
Yeah.
I'm giving someone an opportunity, like people have given me opportunities over my career. And by having to teach them, I have to also learn how to continue to connect. And I have to connect with next generations. And, every 7-8 years, and probably even faster now, those generation mindsets change. Like there's a huge difference in the way my oldest son and my younger son communicate. And they're just 5 years apart.
Right.
So I will continue doing that, and that's just I think many people, if they took that approach, of course I come in and I'm like, regardless, I'm like, look, we're going to do this. I've done this before. I know how to get us there. Trust the process. And there's certainly people out there go, oh, he's really arrogant. I just kind of take the Kid Rock approach. It ain't talking shit if you can back it up.
Well,
there's a time and a place, right? There's a time when, hey, because of time constraints, I'm going to make an arbitrary decision, right? And usually those arbitrary decisions are, hey, you're right. I've seen the wheel turn and I know how not to stub our toe. Or, hey, guess what? I've been told what to do. And everybody has a boss, right? So we're going to do it this way right now because I've been told this is how we have to do it. And you don't have to articulate it either way. The rest of the time, and I know you do this, and Jason, I've seen it, there's an allowance for context. There's an allowance for discussion, because where have some of the best ideas come out of? The junior people, right?
Absolutely.
So it's the T-shirt thing at Sound Circle, right? Best T-shirt wins. I think you and I voted, a couple other people voted, and it was 2 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
Right. They came with the right idea, and other people were cranky about that because they were invested in their opinion. But I think long-term success. Well, yeah, but the long-term success was that we made a statement as a leadership team that the best was going to win. And we didn't go the best employee. They were both interns. And so we started to foster this, hey, if I have a really good idea, I'm going to get listened to. Right. And I think that's the important thing, is especially with younger generations now. Money's not the big driver. They have to get paid. They want a lifestyle of a certain thing, but that's not the absolute driver. They want to understand how they fit in, and they want to understand that they want to believe that to the full extent possible, their opinion is considered.
Yeah.
Well, the money will matter to them when they need to buy a house.
What's that?
The money will start mattering to them when they need to buy a house and they need to have other things to support, but not when they're 24.
Right. But I'll tell you this, I was reading an article not so long ago on that for the most part, buying a house to somebody that's in their 20s and 30s now isn't the important thing it was to us.
No.
Not even a little bit. No, yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah. Right. Not yet. I think that it's going to, as society grows, it's just pushing that further along.
Right.
Like even still today, the amount of people who are starting families in their late 30s, early 40s,
right?
Which 15 years ago, that would be, oh my gosh, don't do that. It's too dangerous. And now, because of how technology has changed, medicine has changed,
it's
not as dangerous.
And I would argue that in particular is a very good thing for society. There's scientifically a lot of evidence for the benefits of having kids later.
Yeah. Well, just look at it in very raw terms. If you have kids when you're 19, 20, 23, let's just say you just got out of school at 23 years old, you started a family. Or you start a family when you're 40, right? The resources I had when I was 40 years old were a lot more than when I was 22, 23 years old. So what grander experience can you more positively affect with a child with the resources you have?
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of that, right? But I have friends of mine that they had kids when they were 18, 19, and 20. Those kids are long gone. They're all adults. They're having kids of their own. And then there's those of us that have had kids later on. And so when do you have, like, they're like, now we're back to having fun. They're empty nesters and they do what they want, right? Well, why isn't this fun, right?
Yeah.
I have a tremendous amount of enjoyment watching both of my kids figure it out, right? And, certainly my oldest is a young adult on his own doing things and kind of navigate the waters of life with a little bit more consequence to it, right? Because he has a place to live on his own and like that. He wants to keep doing that. And then certainly with my youngest, as she tries to navigate her way through high school and then getting into college and potentially being an athlete, right? There's a lot of, to me, that's fun, right?
Yeah.
And would I have shared, and I'll tell you the answer is no, just because of what I was doing for a living and everything, I'd have missed a lot of that. And then the opportunity to go to this camp or to do this wouldn't have been there for her. And so the life experience would have been different. So,
yeah,
I'm of the mind, and I don't have another experience, right? It's what I've experienced and I've enjoyed it. So I seem to think it's good. And that's not the best way to decide what's good,
sure,
what's wrong, just because I didn't experience half of it. There's two choices and I don't know what one of them is all about. Right. But I tend to side with the, plus you're more mature. Right. And I think I'm a much better parent with my youngest than I was with my oldest for a lot of varying reasons, but some of it is just flat out maturity.
Yeah. Well, and I'll end with this. One of the big benefits it has scientifically is that it's one of the biggest contributors to us as a species living longer. Yeah. Right. The older you are when you have kids, you're passing on genes that were favorable for you living that long. Right.
Right.
And so we can creep that line forward more, which is good. I like that.
But here's the thing, and I'm not going to talk about the rest of the world because I don't live there, but in the US, there's that. But then as a society, 78% of people are considered to be overweight. And it's the chief contributor to most maladies. And we're not doing what we can do to change that. Right. We're trying to do it through modern chemistry and some modern biology to say, here's a pill or do this. But rather than saying, hey, I now have young humans on the planet, what can I do to live not just beyond the planet and live there, right? But to be a contributor both socially and to the fabric of society, as well as take care of myself. So I'm of use to others, or I'm at least not a burden to others.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that when you're going to see people now that are going to live well into their hundreds, it's going to be people that have that mindset.
Yep.
Because we're not going to be able to.
It's not that you're just going to live into their hundreds. They're going to be functional.
That's what I mean. They're going to be productive. We're not going to say you've got to go to an elderly care. They're going to have the physical and the mental capacity to continue to contribute to society for a much longer period of time. Yeah. And I think that's fascinating. Like and we've talked about this before, when I play all the junior food games and everything of saying, hey, I'm going to take these supplements and try different things, it's with that in mind.
Absolutely.
So how much longer am I going to be a positive contributor and good partner to whom I love? Yeah. Right. And if I'm not, well, that's really bad, right? You become a ward of the state, and whether it's the state with a little s or a big S, right? At some point, you become a bigger drag on society than not, right? And I say, hey, what do I have to do to be able to go out on top?
You're right. Exactly.
Right? On my own terms with, okay, yeah, I've had, Dave asked me, I've lived 150 years. Now it's time to stop, right? And make a conscious effort on my own.
I think it was Kierkegaard that said, when it's my time, let it be for something, not of something.
Correct. Look at you. And on that note, now it's time to Dr. Pittman with the mic drop.
Boom.
Go get after your chickens, young man.
Yes, sir. Here we go. Farming time. Have a good weekend, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Have a great time.
Cheers.